Okay, so picture this. You are in a meeting,
Right.
and the vibe is just incredible. You and the team just came up with this killer idea for a new product launch. Everyone is high-fiving. Maybe someone is practically popping a bottle of champagne in their head, and you are just feeling on top of the world.
I think I know exactly where this is going.
Of course you do, because then a voice comes from the corner of the room.
Yep.
It's that one person who quietly raises their hand and says, hey guys, has anyone thought about what happens if the supply chain breaks in month 3? Or, if the regulations change next week?
And just like that,
Shift. The air is completely out of the balloon.
the party is officially over.
It is over. Silence in the room, eye rolls. Everyone is just thinking, why do you have to be such a buzzkill?
Right, because it feels like they are actively trying to ruin the moment.
Exactly. But here is the massive question we are tackling today for you guys. Is that person actually a pessimist? Are they just naturally negative? Or, and this is a really big role, or are they actually the single most vital person in that room?
It's a great question. And if we look at the source material we are diving into today, the answer is definitively the latter.
Yeah.
That person isn't trying to ruin the party. They're literally the only one checking the smoke detectors to make sure the building doesn't burn down while everyone else is busy dancing.
I love that analogy. So today we are doing a deep dive into a very specific and honestly fascinating personality profile. We are pulling this from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report,
Yes, the ME80,
and we are decoding what they call the WSWN,
also known as the active risk warner.
the active risk corner.
Yeah.
I have to say, it sounds a bit intense, like a military alert system or something.
Well, it kind of is, but before we get into the specifics of this human alarm system, we really need to zoom out for a second. We need to explain the framework we're working with today because the Max Energy ME80 system is a bit different.
Right. For listeners who maybe haven't heard our previous dives into this, the ME80 isn't just your standard personality test, right? It's not just a magazine quiz asking if you are introverted or extroverted.
Correct. The Max Energy system actually looks at personality as an energy management system.
An energy system.
Yeah, think of it like a circuit board
Mm-hmm.
or an engine under the hood of a car. It analyzes how you process information, how you handle emotion, and how you make decisions through very specific layers.
So it's all about the flow of energy.
Exactly. So when we talk about the active risk warner today, we aren't just looking at what they do, which on the surface is worry, but we are looking at how their internal energy flows to actually produce that worry. And more importantly, how they use it to protect everyone around them.
That is such a crucial distinction. We are really looking under the hood today. So let's establish the identity of this WSWN type. If we had to write a hero description for the active risk warner, what does the report actually say?
The report gives them this really powerful core manifesto. It says they see danger before it hits and uses worry to pull people back from the edge.
Uses worry to pull people back from the edge. That completely reframes the entire emotion of worry for me. Usually we just think of worry as a total waste of time, like rocking in a rocking chair. It gives you something to do but gets you nowhere.
But here it is a tool.
A protective tool.
Exactly. The core definition of this personality is that they are driven by heightened vigilance. The active risk warner possesses this innate, always-on risk detection system.
So they can't just turn it off.
No, this isn't a switch they can flick off on the weekends. It activates immediately the second they encounter vagueness or irrationality or overlooked details.
So while I am looking at that project plan in the meeting and seeing dollar signs and success and promotions, they are looking at the exact same plan and seeing what?
They are seeing the cracks in the foundation. Because to them, risk is not some abstract concept.
Right.
They view risk as a chain of potential consequences that is already spiraling out of control.
Wow.
They don't just see problem A. They see problem A leading directly to problem B, which is inevitably going to cause catastrophe C.
That sounds exhausting, honestly, just living like that. But it brings us to their control mechanism and their philosophy. Because if you see the world as a constant minefield, you have to have a specific way of navigating it right.
You do. And their philosophy is fascinating. It basically boils down to this one idea. I would rather create tension in the moment than bear irreversible costs later.
Okay, wait. Let's pause right there. Create tension in the moment.
Yes.
That perfectly explains that meeting scenario we started with.
Oh,
They actually know they're being annoying.
they absolutely know.
Wow.
And they accept it. They are completely willing to be the bad guy for 5 minutes if it means saving the project from total failure in 5 months. They value the integrity of the system way above the immediate comfort of the group.
That is a really tough trade-off to make socially, to volunteer to be the wet blanket.
It is, but they are doing it to save the future version of the team.
Okay, so we know why they do it. Now, I really want to get into the mechanics of how it works, because the max energy report breaks down their energy matrix into 4 specific layers.
Yes, the IQ, EQ, and manifestation layer.
Right, this is the engine of the active risk warner.
And it operates in a very specific rhythm. It goes early warning, followed by correction leading to resumption.
Resumption. So it is not just about stopping everything forever.
No, and that is the biggest misconception about these folks. They don't want to stop the car permanently. They just want to pump the brakes, change the flat tire, and then keep driving.
That makes so much sense. So let's look at those layers, because this is where the real magic happens. Walk us through the flow. Let's say an active risk warner is reading a vendor contract. What happens first?
First, we hit the IP layer. That's the inner value layer. In this ME80 system for the Warner, this is effectively the radar.
The radar. Okay.
This is defined as risk perception activation. This is pure gut instinct. Before they can even articulate what is wrong, the IP layer sends a ping.
Just a ping.
It's just a ping. It is sensory input detecting an anomaly. They just feel that something is off.
So they don't even know what is wrong yet, just that the vibe of the contract is bad.
Exactly. It's raw data hitting the system. Alert. And then that energy immediately shoots over to the second layer, the IQ layer.
The emotional activation layer. Now,
Yeah.
usually I associate IQ with pure, cold logic. What is it doing here in an emotional activation context?
Here, the IQ layer acts as the database. It is defined as experience-driven verification judgment.
Ah, so they are fact-checking the gut feeling.
Precisely. Their brain instantly runs a search query against all their past experiences. They think, I have this bad feeling. Have I felt this before? And the database says yes. 3 years ago, when a vendor used this specific phrasing, we got sued.
Wow.
So they verify if the threat is real based on historical data.
Okay, so now they have a gut feeling on the radar that has been backed up by a memory from the database.
Right.
Now here's where I get a little confused. The next layer is the EQ layer, the decision calculation layer. Usually we think of the warrior type as being sort of detached or strictly analytical, but EQ implies emotion.
This is honestly the biggest surprise in the entire report. For the active risk warner, the EQ layer is the sensor. It is defined as emotional sensing and resonance.
What exactly are they sensing, though?
They are simulating the emotional impact of the disaster.
Oh,
This is crucial to understand them. They don't just calculate mathematically that we will lose $10,000. They actually feel the future panic of the team. They feel the shame of failure. They feel the immense stress that will happen if this goes wrong.
whoa. So they are effectively pre-living the trauma of the mistake.
Yes, that emotional resonance is exactly what fuels their urgency. They aren't speaking up because they want to be right or prove how smart they are. They're speaking up because they genuinely care about the group's safety and they desperately want to avoid that future pain.
That makes them seem so much more empathetic than that buzzkill label suggests.
Completely. And finally, that emotional pressure builds up until it hits the fourth layer, the manifestation layer.
Which is the break.
The break. This is defined as energy released outward. This is when they actually open their mouth. The internal ping becomes an external stop. They challenge the leader, they pause the meeting, they refuse to sign the document.
So that whole process, the radar, the database, the sensor, and the break, that happens in what, seconds?
Sometimes milliseconds. While everyone else is just casually reading the first paragraph of the contract, the active risk warner has already simulated the company's bankruptcy.
That is just intense.
Mm.
And it brings us right to their inner traits. The report lists their absolute core trait as early sight of danger.
That is their superpower. The central point here is that they never overlook an anomaly.
Never.
Almost never. Their attention naturally gravitates toward gaps and boundaries.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, imagine the team is walking down a beautiful path together. Most people are looking up at the horizon, right? They're excited about where they are going.
The big picture.
The active risk warner is looking down at the pavement. They're the only one noticing the cracks.
So they see the instability while everyone else is just seeing the progress.
Exactly. And the mechanism they use to do this is called rapid worst-case scenario modeling.
Which honestly sounds like a recipe for a full-blown anxiety attack.
Well, it can be, but practically speaking, in a team setting, it is invaluable. They don't just panic vaguely, they deconstruct the risk. They turn a vague fear into what the report calls discussable correctable nodes.
Discussable, correctable no's. I really like that.
Yeah.
So instead of just screaming, we're all doomed, they say we need to fix point A, point B, and point C.
Precisely. They turn terror into a checklist.
However, and there's always a however, there has to be a downside to this.
Yeah.
You cannot live your life constantly simulating disaster without paying a serious price. The report talks about a shadow blind spot, right?
Yes, it does.
Mhm.
The shadow here is amplified anxiety. The trap is that this sustained high vigilance creates a massive internal load on their nervous system.
It's like running that car engine at 7,000 RPM all day long.
Exactly. And when they are under pressure or if they are just really tired, minor issues can rapidly escalate into catastrophic imagination.
Catastrophic imagination.
Yeah. So a typo in an email isn't just a typo anymore. In their mind, it becomes a lawsuit, which leads to losing the biggest client, which leads to mass layoffs.
That snowball effect, it just gets away from them.
Right. And the social cost of that is really significant. The report mentions their need for rhythmic regulation.
Which means what? Taking a vacation.
Basically taking breaks, getting outside perspective, stepping away from the data. Because without that rhythmic regulation, their constant reminders and warnings can start to feel like rejection to other people.
That is a really important point for anyone listening who works with this personality.
Yeah.
If I excitedly propose an idea to you and you immediately list 10 reasons it will fail, I don't hear, I am protecting the company. I hear your idea is stupid and I don't respect you.
Exactly. And that creates a really toxic cycle. The warner feels ignored, so they push even harder and become more frantic.
And the team feels attacked, so they pull away.
Right. It just leads to total energy depletion and tension for everyone involved.
Let's dig a little deeper into that social dynamic. Because the report describes their social relationships as reassuring yet unsettling. That's a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
It is the central paradox of this personality type. They are reassuring because they establish safety boundaries.
Right.
You know that if an active risk warner is on your team, you are not going to accidentally walk off a cliff because they have thoroughly checked the map.
But they're unsettling because
They ask the sharp-cutting questions that nobody wants to answer. They force you to look at the ugly possibilities that you are desperately trying to ignore so you can keep the good vibes going.
there's a specific term the report uses for what happens to the team. Risk fatigue.
Yes. This is the ultimate danger zone for the warner. If they warn too often about too many things, especially small, inconsequential things, the team builds up an immunity.
Like alarm fatigue in a hospital.
Exactly. They just stop listening. It becomes the boy who cried wolf syndrome, even if the wolf is actually real this time.
So for the active risk warner, learning when to pull the brake is just as important as knowing how to pull it.
Absolutely. Not every single crack in the pavement needs a 2-hour meeting.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Let's pivot to the workplace value. If I am a CEO or a team leader listening to this, why do I need an active risk warner? Because honestly, they sound a little high maintenance. What is their actual business value?
Their core advantage in a business is early-stage risk scanning. Think about the pure financial cost of fixing a mistake.
Okay.
If you fix a flaw in the planning phase, it costs $1.
Yeah.
If you have to fix that exact same flaw after the product launches, it costs $1 million.
So they secure correction time.
They buy you time, they establish baselines, they build the auditing mechanisms and the tracking systems. But here's the most surprising part, and I think this is my favorite insight from the entire ME80 report.
Okay, what is it?
When a genuine crisis actually happens, the active risk warner is almost always the calmest person in the room.
Really? I would have fully expected them to be the ones absolutely freaking out.
Not at all. Think about how their brain works. They have already mentally rehearsed this exact disaster scenario 10 times in their head.
Oh, wow.
So while everyone else is in shock running around like headless chickens, the warner is just thinking, okay, I anticipated this. Here is the SOP. Here is step 1. Here is step 2.
They return the team to a clear process.
Exactly. They're the anchor in the storm because they saw the storm coming on their radar long before anyone else even looked at the sky.
That is incredibly valuable. So if someone listening identifies with this profile, or maybe they manage someone who does, what are the recommended career fields for this personality? Where can they be themselves without driving everyone around them crazy?
The report recommends fields where vigilance is seen as a virtue, not a hindrance. Obviously, risk management and compliance is huge.
Right, building firewalls and setting red lines. Places where being highly suspicious is literally the job description.
Exactly. Also, project review and quality control. They are the person who meticulously checks the parachute before the jump. They are brilliant at eliminating blind spots in a process.
What about more strategic roles?
High uncertainty decision support is a great niche for them. When a company is being very aggressive or expanding rapidly, you need someone to apply those safety brakes to ensure the whole strategy doesn't just fly off the rails.
And finally,
Crisis warning and process design. Writing the SOPs, the standard operating procedures for loss of control scenarios, they are absolutely the best people to write the manual on what to do when everything goes wrong.
this has been such an eye-opening look at a personality type that I think is so often misunderstood. We just label them as negative or anxious and move on.
It really is unfair, and I think if we look at the golden sentence from the report to wrap this up, it sums up their value perfectly.
Lay it on us. What is the golden sentence?
The active risk warner's mission is not to create panic, but to prevent entirely preventable catastrophic losses. When vigilance is understood and roles respected, they become an organization's most reliable and indispensable line of defense.
Indispensable line of defense. I absolutely love that. So to all the active risk warners out there listening to this, thank you for checking the parachute. Thank you for spotting the typo in the contract. And honestly, thank you for worrying so the rest of us don't have to.
Absolutely. We really do need you.
Just a quick reminder to you guys listening, this entire deep dive was based on the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It is an incredibly fascinating system.
It really is. And if you want to understand your own energy matrix or learn more about these different profiles, you can visit their official website at www.maxenergylife.com.com.
Or you can search on Facebook. The specific terms you want to look for are Max Energy H or Meta Energy H. There is so much more depth there than we could ever cover in 20 minutes.
Definitely worth checking out if today's breakdown resonated with you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. But before you go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Think about the most annoying, skeptical person in your life right now. The one who always pokes holes in your plans. What if you aren't actually dealing with a hater? What if you are just ignoring your own personal guardian angel just because you don't like the tone of their voice?
Something to think about.
Stay safe, check your blind spots, and we'll see you next time.